Britons facing the biggest cost of living crisis in more than a decade, as many households prepare for bills to rocket as the energy price cap rises. 54% on Friday. It's an eye-watering amount. It's an extra £700 a year on average. So, for the first time ever on Good Morning Britain, we're taking your calls live with Martin Lewis answering questions on how to manage the changes and the things that you can do to help ease some of the burden. If you have a question, please do give us a call. It's free, 08000 320 223 by 8:30 this morning. You have to be 18 or over. We'll try to answer as many as possible. We're also live across the country taking your questions. First, though, Martin, we have a question from Judy on Twitter. Now, she says, am I right in thinking if I don't sign up to a new tariff, the most I would pay would be £164.25 a month, which is £1,971 per year?
No, that is not correct. The £1,971 a year, which is quoted as the new price cap from the 1st of April, is just an estimate of what somebody on typical use would pay. There is no actual price cap. It's actually a cap on the unit rates and standing charges you pay for energy, which means if you use more, you pay more. If you use less, you pay less. Now, this varies by region, and this is what the price cap is. It's a cap for how much you can pay. You can go and do a search, and you can find out exactly what those unit rates are moving to. They're too complicated to give you here. Now, who's on the price cap? Well, the only tariffs that are capped are the standard variable, the default tariffs that people move to. So you can still have fixes that are more expensive than the price cap. You're on the price cap if you have never switched. You're on the price cap if you had a fix and it ended and you did nothing. You're on the price cap if your firm went bust and you were automatically ported to a new tariff. And that means the vast majority of people in England, Scotland and Wales are on the price cap right now, but it does not cap the total amount that you pay.
Ellie on Twitter is asking if you, Martin, can go through whether it is best to stay on a variable rate or whether it's preferable to fix. Her variable, for instance, would be £120. The fixed rate is £160. But which is the better option? OK. So let me take you and everybody else through this. This is the big question, and this is where you really need to understand what's happening. So I've got a graph. There you are. Rare on Good Morning Britain, but here's a graph. So first of all, this is my should you fix graph. Let's start with wholesale gas prices. Now, the reason I'm only talking about gas prices is because much of the electricity we use in this country is generated by gas, so that feeds in to the whole cost of energy. What you can't see here is if I were to take this back years, it was always at around 50, 60p a therm. But you can see how much higher it is now. Even at this, it looks like it's dropped from the peak in the last month or so. That's still at over 4 times the traditional cost of gas from about 18 months ago. And it is that is driving all these huge price hikes. So my next thing to bring on is the price cap. This is what's happened to the price cap. It is actually based on previous wholesale rates. You can see this is where we are right now. It's currently, for someone on typical use, but as I've mentioned before, that doesn't really matter that much, £1,277 a year. On Friday, it's going up 54%, a massive leap, so that for someone on typical use, it's £1,971 a year. But to make the decision as to whether you fix or not, most fixes last a year. So we have to do a little bit of crystal ball gazing. Now, the important thing to understand is the price cap will change again in October, and it will last, we think, for 6 months, although they are consulting on changing that. And that October price cap is based on wholesale rates from the beginning of February this year until the end of July. So we are 2 months through that 6-month period. Based on what's happened so far, which includes this incredible peak that we saw in wholesale prices, the current prediction is in October it's going to go up around 25%, which is for someone on typical use to £2,500. Now, that's actually less than it was 2 weeks ago. Then I was predicting it was going to be around £3,000. So that's what you're looking at. If you look at that as an average price over the next year, this isn't certain, an average price over the next year for someone on typical use, and everybody else is in proportion, it's around £2,200. So now let's look at what the cheapest fixes are. Let's bring those on. There we go. It animates up. Cheapest fix right now on the market, £2,880, which is actually more than the prediction of the October price cap. So it isn't worth getting a fix today. It's just not worth it. Stick on the price cap. What you want to watch for, though, is does your firm, because there are no open market ones here, comparison sites are gone for the moment, does your firm ever offer you a much cheaper fixed deal? If it were to offer you a fix at no more than around 20% higher than the April price cap, and that was a little more than 20%, the one you asked me in the question, so I wouldn't bother, then I would probably consider fixing for price certainty, though I can't promise it will work. So that's the line we're on right now. The cheapest fixes are far more than where we think it's going to go in October, but this could all change because it's changing so quickly. Does that make sense? I know it's complicated.
It makes sense. It is incredibly complicated. I mean, you're a personal finance expert. Most people, including the person you're talking to this morning, not personal finance experts. You know, for people to have to do this much work...
Shall I stop?
Yes.
I'm going to stop you.
Yeah.
Here is an answer for those people who don't get it.
Yeah.
If you're on the price cap, do nothing.
Right.
You do nothing, you will stay on the price cap, you'll stick on this and it will go up. And if you don't know what you're doing, the safest thing to do is do nothing, stay on the price cap, do not fix, do not do anything else. Right. That's the safest thing to do. There are nuances around it, but if you don't get it, do nothing. Does that help?
Yes, it does, because I think simple information is really helpful because people are lost in this. And also, as you've identified, the price cap will change again in October. And, you know, you've mentioned how much higher it will be. That's alarming to people. So they think, should I fix in order to get out of trouble then?
And if you can get a cheap fix, yes, but there are no cheap fixes. Now, what may happen, and there was a period about 6 weeks ago when I suddenly spotted there was an Eon one and there's been an Octopus one and a Scottish Power one, that their existing customers could get cheap fixes. And I went to my social media and I said, if you're an Eon customer, go get its Eon Next version 11. And thousands of people did. But yet that's what it's like. You know, it's pounce when you see one of these. But as a general figure at the moment, there aren't any good ones.
Okay, that is simple. Right, prepayment meters. Many of the most vulnerable bill payers are on prepayment meters. So what can they do, Martin?
Well, the logic of fixing there doesn't work because there are no cheap prepayment fixing. What the big thing that is being talked about for the moment is whether if you top up now, you can keep your cheap rate if you're on a prepayment meter. Now, this doesn't work if you've got a smart prepayment meter, which is about 40% of people. The current logic was always that you got the rate on the day that you topped up your key or card, that you put money on it, and that lasted until you topped it up again, which of course means that if you were to load it up now, before the rates go up on Friday, then you would keep that cheap rate into April. Now, at first, we got confirmation that this was going to work with everybody other than Scottish Power. I got it in writing from the regulator, from the firms, but all the information's changed on that for technical reasons. So the first thing to say is that system of topping up as much as you can now is very unlikely to work on any gas prepayment meters because of the way that those meters work. On electricity meters, Scottish Power says, so it won't work on Scottish Power. The others have said, yes, this will work, unless so many people do it that it costs them too much, and then they reserve the right to back charge you. Now, the ones I think most likely that this trick, if you like, will work on is British Gas, Octopus, Bulb and Shell. The one it's least likely to work on is Eon. The rest are in the middle. Of course, if you do top up more than you've got right now, if you can afford it, and many on prepay can't, but if you do try and do what you can to top up right now and it doesn't work, you don't actually lose out because you're only paying the rate once we get into April, but you might lose out on your cash flow. And one big thing I would say to you, especially if you're trying this trick, is go and take a photo of your prepayment meter on the 31st of March so that if they do try and back charge you can say, well, I know exactly what I was using until that date, and email it to yourself so you've got a time stamp on that photo so you can prove it was the 31st of March. I hope that makes sense. I'll take more questions if people want more details on that later.
The mainstream way people pay is direct debits. 8 out of 10 people in England, Scotland and Wales pay that way. What should they be doing about those payments?
I was just talking to Charlotte about this a moment before. Look, the most important start thing, tomorrow, the 31st of March, take a meter reading. If you're not going to remember tomorrow, just do it today. Why? Because that draws a line in the sand with the energy firm and it says, every single unit of energy I have used until this meter reading should be charged at the cheap rate. Don't go estimating summer's at the high rate. So get your meter reading in, preferably tomorrow. You don't need to if you're on a smart meter that does it for you. And get that line in the sand drawn. Now, many people have said to me, I don't like direct debit. They're estimating my usage is too high. I want to switch away from it because I want to take back control. Not sure where that phrase came from. So look, there's a problem with that, because direct debit is the cheapest way to pay. If you switch to monthly bills where you pay when you get a bill, that's 6% more expensive. You will pay 6% more under the price cap on paying when you get a bill than you will on direct debit. So you might want the control, but you pay more to use energy. If you can avoid it and stick on direct debit, I absolutely would. That's the best way to stick there at the moment.
Martin, thank you very much indeed.